Hello everybody, I know it didn't take too long this time, but I'm kind of like a kid in a candy store these days, with this new technology. I'm such a YouTuber these days. Wow. Anyway, before I actually introduce you guys to the next video, which is gonna come in a couple of days. It's not gonna be this one just yet. This is kind of like a in-between video, I suppose, kind of like improvised. And it's about a subject that might not mean a lot to you guys, but I saw this like for so many years, I was like, since I got to this whole social media thing with the forums back in the day, and it was always about like comparisons, right? Comparing different artists. You can say that you can, it's like you have this with music as well. We have like with traditional art, we have with digital art, we have like in very specific parts of the those groups as well. For example, like comparing who's the best guy at building monsters, who's the best guy at making portraits, which is basically what I do these days. There is always this thing about comparing people and comparing their work, and I think it's more exacerbated when you're younger. You don't know better, it's like, and you're avid to learn more. And there's this thing about like, I really want to show how much I know, how much I learned. And there's this thing about like back in the day with the forums, it was quite annoying because like seems like people would love to nitpick on people's works. And it was very interesting because a lot of times you would check the person's work and the work was not that great, and you're just like, oh, whatever, right? Or you would never like even reply. It's not being a snob. It's just like, it's like you can tell that the person doesn't know a lot, but it doesn't come from a bad place for the most part, I believe. I believe it's coming from a place of, it's like I admire this person's work, but I can see that it's not quite there, or based on what I know in terms of the anatomy of like lips or mouth, I can tell that those lips are not convincing just yet. So a lot of people come from a good place in their hearts to just like try to help people out to get the best out of that artwork. But a lot of times it comes from a mean place too, right? Like not a lot of times, but sometimes you can tell people are coming from a mean place as well. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day, it's like what you have to keep in mind is that people express themselves with whatever art they make. It can be through music. There is a style that's created, a certain way that the person is going to play the instrument. With the art, the type of art we do, digital art is the same thing. There's a lot of technicalities, but also there is a lot to do with what the person is trying to express. And that's the focus that I want to keep during this video, which is you have to learn, I believe, to observe and to judge the work for how the work makes you feel in a way. It's like when I look at something like this, let me just switch my screen here. When I look at something like this, you go to Artstation. And then at Artstation, you have like this amazing collection of art all the time. Let me just adjust my camera here. Collection of art all the time. And then you have all kinds of different styles. You have your 3D work in there. You have lots of 2D work, lots of very, it's like beginners kind of work, but also a lot of professional work being posted, all kinds of levels, all kinds of stages of, maybe it's just a sketch or it's completely finished and fully rendered. But at the end of the day, this is basically a collection of human expression, I would say. It's a collection of ideas and people trying to express themselves the best they can. Obviously, there's this the factor of trying to get like a position in the industry a lot of times, so you have to show your face out there. Otherwise, obviously, if you don't show yourself when you're a beginner, nobody's going to promote you, or for the most part, you're going to have a hard time. So the best thing to do is to actually self-promote, making sure that your work is compatible with your words, right? Sometimes people have like a lot of big words to describe their work, and the work doesn't quite speak at the same volume, I would say. But at the end of the day, like if you look at something like this, let's look for what I was talking about before. Let's look for portraits, very specifically portraits, right? You have like portraits that are there, and then you have all those beautiful pieces. Lots of them are kind of unfinished, some are more finished. You're gonna have like the trending ones in here, so you're gonna see all like the ones that people like the best. You're gonna see like some very interesting pieces, very beautiful pieces, like this one by Arno, like a portrait of his, I believe his grandma, yeah. And then you're gonna have like some other pieces. Let's say this one here by Tom Newbury, very cool piece as well. A lot of very interesting accessories in the clothing and all that stuff. And you can tell, like, I mean, like, this is a fantasy character. The other one was more like a realistic portrait. There's like this one that by me, yeah, it's like the portrait of Giger that I posted the other day. And then there's all kinds of beautiful portraits. You know, it's like this one with a very realistic lighting by Johan, I suppose. I'm sorry if I'm gonna butcher your names. But beautiful lighting, you know, it's like kind of like a portrait classic side lighting right there. So there's a lot to explore when you look at all those pieces at Artstation. But the thing that's interesting is that how can you compare, you know, it's like which one is the best one from the sake, just for the sake of what the piece is actually expressing, you know, it's like talking to you. Imagine that every one of those visual pieces is actually of the voice of the artist. So you see like this one here from Sefki, who is amazing as well. You know, this one is, I think, is a commercial work he did. He's a great like modeler, but also a great like TD. And the cool thing about Sefki is like he posts a lot of the progress shots that he does, lots of different lighting setups and things that he does. And I do the same thing. I like to do that. Some other people prefer to just post a final piece and get it done, and then just, you know, that's what it is. And that from that point on, you know, that's it. So Hadi, he's also an amazing sculptor, and he does some of the coolest portraits out there. His latest one is this one here, right? Which is amazing. Audrey Hepburn, one of the best versions of her I've seen, probably the very best, I would say. But in terms of when I say very best, is that combination of things. It's not about like just the model being better than some other model, or you know, let me just like go back here and just do this again. So back to me here. Enough with those suckers. No, just kidding. All amazing artists, but the thing is, like, we all have a different voice, and that's the thing that's interesting to observe. When you're talking about like someone who's trying to express themselves, a lot of those artists, they are basically, I would say, like, a lot of them are very introvert, and none of them, not a lot of them actually can speak in front of a camera, I would say. You know, I have a hard time doing this. This is all brand new to me. This is the second video. I am more comfortable talking to my students because I'm interacting with the actual human beings and not just looking at the lens like this. So it's still pretty awkward. I hope I get better at this. I still, you know, feel pretty nervous. But when you're an introvert, I mean, like, you conceal yourself. You sit in front of your computer for hours and hours and hours, locked in an office like here, you know, some people in their bedroom, whatever. And you just like focus and put so many hours tweaking little things, you know, it's like, and changing slightly the lighting here and changing a little hair in the character, you know. It's like it's so much dedication. It's a lot of dedication, a lot of hours spent to build those portraits, for example. And at the end of the day, we release this to the world to see, right? We finish the piece and we release to the world to see. And for the most part, I would say, like, a lot of us have this thing about being like an imposter, like the imposter syndrome. And that means that you never think that you're good enough. So when you post something, you're always like waiting for someone to, you know, to criticize it and to nitpick it, right? Just like nitpicking little things here and there. But at the end of the day, like, it's just your voice that you're trying to show. You're just trying to express yourself. So when you put the portrait out there, there's a lot to do with like the style that you develop over the period of time. If you look at any of those artists that I just showed you, there is also Ian Springs, who is amazing, by the way. If you look at any of their pieces, they come from different places in terms of their interests, what they're interested in, what type of subjects. There's a lot to do with the drama behind the lighting that they use. And a lot of times this comes from an internal library that we build over the years in our brains. When you go to museums, since you're a kid, when you see certain pieces, they speak to you stronger than other pieces. And those things make an impact in you. And then when you're trying to portray certain things, you end up like borrowing from that source and then bringing this expression out. And so you have like a favorite way of sculpting a nose, because over the years your internal library of noses developed in a certain way that you favor sculpting a nose in a certain way, so you have a little bit of a bias towards that. And then same for the lips, same for the volume of the cranium, same for the way you sculpt the ears, same for the way that you pose your characters doing portraits. The type of lighting that you like the most. It all comes like from small biases that you collect in this internal library that you build over the years. And then when you get to show this as your voice, what happens is that it translates into a style, right? Like some people say, like, tell me sometimes, it's like, oh, I can tell from even like if an image just pops in front of my feed, I can tell it's yours because of the style. And I can say the same thing about most of those artists I just show you. They have their own style, and it all comes from this specific way of, they can be the camera angle that they use, the type of lens that they use. Some of us, obviously, we try to actually create some variation with it and introduce other things more interesting. Other ways of lighting the character and all this stuff, instead of like just being stuck with old Baroque or Renaissance kind of lighting, whatever it is. We try to explore something a little bit more modern and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, there is this combination of things. It's like the way that you sculpt the wrinkles, the way you sculpt the pores, whatever it is. And by the way, when it comes to pores and all this stuff, those amazing pieces here, most of them don't have like a pore detail kind of level of care in terms of like going so deep into the macro structures of the skin. But it doesn't matter at all, because like those models are not built to be seen for the most part like from super close up. I do it for the fun of it in my own pieces and to learn more about the structures of the skin and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter when you see a portrait that's built to be seen like from the waist up or like shoulder to head. You don't need to put a pore detail or anything. It doesn't need to be. The structure of the face, the primary forms and the secondary forms have to be spot on. They have to be really good in order to sell the character. The skin shader, you can cheat with it, right? The thing about like building all the pores the way that I think they should be built, it's because I'm trying to keep things a little bit more physically accurate. So even if I have the model from a certain distance, the model is gonna it's like the type of reflection I'm gonna get that's more diffuse, the type of specular I'm gonna get in certain areas. It's gonna look more naturalistic if the skin is being broken down like correctly in a certain way. But at the same time, you can simulate those things with different shaders. You can play with the roughness of the surface to get a similar result, and you don't need to go micro detail. So it really doesn't matter it's like how much detail you want to put. It's just a matter of like how much time you are willing to add to your piece. But at the end of the day, this is all technicalities. It's all about at the end of the day, it's about the voice that the person has, the artist has, and the way that the piece actually communicates and talks to you. When you go to a museum, when you look at any piece of art, or hear like a musical piece or whatever it is, if you're doing it the right way, you're letting it talk to you first. If you start from a point of really start picking apart the whole thing, you're missing the whole point. The comparison I make is like when you go to this beautiful place, you go to Lake Tahoe, for example, right? I have like, this is not the hat, I have another hat before with Lake Tahoe in it. And so you go to that beautiful place, and instead of like just breathing that fresh air and just looking at that beautiful environment, and let the environment talk to you back, you're basically on your phone or you're doing something else, and not letting the full effect of that environment to actually hit you. And when you look at a piece of art, I think like it's respectful in a way for me towards my fellow artists to just look at the piece. It doesn't matter if it's realistic, if it's a cartoon, if it is whatever it is, if the piece has soul. Now, it's one thing that I like to talk about, like the soul in your work. And I believe the soul is inserted when you're, obviously you have to have the technical skills to be able to emulate certain things. But when you put things like in a way that they are honest, you're coming from the right place in your heart to actually create something that communicates with other human beings, something that someone can look at and say, yeah, that looks very cool. Like, you don't need to accept it as being like a perfect piece or anything. As long as the piece talks to you, it has some emotion that it conveys. If there's a backstory behind the facial expression or the body expression, something like that, that is already like a huge achievement, I believe, from the place of the creator, right? Like, so if I'm the creator of that piece and I spend all this time in it and I just posted online, and then someone made a quick comment about like, oh, this character looks alive to me, or, you know, it's like I can feel his pain, or whatever it is, you know, something like this. This is such an achievement, and this is all that matters at the end of the day, is how much you can connect with other human beings when you post a piece of artwork or music or anything related to, you know, the expression of our art in general. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I expect you guys to not to follow what I'm saying, you know, because who am I? You know, it's like I mean, like there's lots of CG gurus out there that seem to have all the answers. I don't have any answers. It's just like everything here in this channel is going to be just like my own observations about how I see the world, how I see artwork and things like that. And the way I see is exactly that, you know. It's like a long time ago I stopped nitpicking people's work. I can see flaws easily, I can tell. I'm very picky with my own work. And trust me, I'm my worst boss. That's why I hardly finish anything ever. So you can put like a perfect piece of artwork in front of me and I'm going to find, if I want to, I can find ways to actually take it apart. But what's the point? At the end of the day, this is like, it doesn't bring me any joy to do that. And what brings me joy is to actually just observe the honest intention of an artist to communicate with me as the observer. And if I can see that, it can be like in the honesty of the work itself, like how the whole concept works, or the honesty of the techniques being used as well. A lot of that, if you're an artist who actually do similar work, you can tell the amount of work that those things you know, take to make. It's a lot of work. And then when you see those pieces fully realized, but you forget about technicalities, you know, it's like you forget about, you know, it's like, is this a CG piece? Is this like a traditional piece? Whatever it is, you forget about that. That becomes secondary. That's the whole idea, I believe. Another thing that I think Instagram and Facebook and some other social media did, which is very interesting, is to actually mix traditional artists and digital artists. And what's really cool about that is that it's kind of like a level field, I believe. And my concept is this, I don't know if you agree with it, but every time you post something online, it's simply a 2D representation. It's a picture of something. It can be a 3D sculpture. It can be a physical piece. Someone took a picture of it, and all of a sudden, this piece became a 2D representation. It's just a photo of the sculpture. It's not the sculpture itself. And then if that's what I'm seeing is a 2D representation, that doesn't matter if it's a 3D piece made in the computer or a traditional piece made like with real materials. We meet in the same field, basically, like it's the same, like it's playing field. So what happens is that when you say, when you see someone comment in your work and is a traditional artist, and he's just like, or she is just like telling you, you know, how much they like your piece because it communicates in a certain way, and also intrigued about the techniques being used, that's the best compliment you can get. You know, it's like someone who actually has a ton of experience in a different type of technique and with the real world materials and everything, and then this person is still can see behind all the techniques, you know. And so that's the most important part for me, and I think that's the main point of this video, is to actually try to encourage people to see the artwork as the voice of the artist. You know, it doesn't matter if you don't like the voice. You might, you know, it's like there are lots of singers out there. I don't like the voice, their physical voice. And so it's a matter of like having this thing about like I have taste for certain things, right? Like I prefer this voice to this voice. But in terms of, or I prefer this idea in relation to this idea, right? This idea is more relatable to me. It speaks to me better than this other idea. This one seems a little shallow. This one I can relate because it's more in line with something I lived in my own life. So there's a lot of things to do it, like with taste, personal taste, and the way that we assemble this internal library of biases that I mentioned at the very beginning of the video. But at the same time, from the point of view of like who is the best artist, who is the better artist, it's very, very hard to tell based on it's like all those pieces that we see online, and because a lot of them come with all this personality that comes from the artist, it comes from their heart. And then when you see those pieces in front of you, please be patient with it and let the piece talk to you first. And then if you want to nitpick later, just as an exercise, but without being a D, just go ahead and do it. You know, it's like if you think it's going to help the artist or something like that. But at the end of the day, you know, the artist is just like happy to share, and it's such a relief when you actually finish a piece and you can just put it in front of the public, and then at that point the piece is not even yours anymore. You know, it's like you just did your part, putting all the work and all the effort in it. But at that point, you know, it's like you just send your kid to the world. You know, it's like, okay, you go and now you're on your own. So there's this feeling as well. So that's what I had to say about this, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm planning to create the next one very soon, which is going to be the one exploring a portrait from beginning to end, not in super detail like I said before, but you know, detailed enough for someone to, maybe like someone who never seen this before, to spark some interest in creating something similar. You know, it's like exploring those new technologies. Not so new, right? Like computer graphics is around for a long time now, but to someone like me, you know, I'm gonna turn 50 this year. It's still kind of like, it feels like magic to me, you know, considering I started with the computers in the 90s, and then the end of the 90s, and then nowadays, you know, it's like you get to have access to amazing software like ZBrush and Mudbox and so many others out there, to sculpt, you know, it's like with a tablet, and you know, it's gonna be, and a lot of people doing a lot of VR as well. So yeah, it's still kind of like a new thing that keeps evolving a lot, and we're definitely gonna see more of this. And I predicted this some time ago when I said when ZBrush started, you know, it's like a lot of people posting new ZBrush pieces. I mentioned there's a point in time that I believe what's going to happen is that everything's going to level up. It's going to level up, and it's going to level in general. So the quality is going to be so good that all this eye candy that we are just like so distracted with, which was like all the super fine detail and all that stuff. You know, it's like in the hair, whatever it is. At some point, people are just gonna forget about it because it's gonna become so good. The art is gonna evolve to a point that things are so good that people are gonna start forgetting about all those technical things and paying more attention to what's in front of them in terms of human communication, human emotions. And I think that's the point we are at right now. And I really appreciate all the artwork and the beautiful work I've seen, you know, in the past recent years. I have a little bit of a contribution to this in a way. Don't want to sound cocky or anything, but my classes, I mean, like there are a lot of those artists doing portraits these days actually had, you know, it's like passed by my classes and learned certain things with me. Some of them incorporated to their work, some of them decide to incorporate with other techniques that they learned on their own, which is really cool. And so there's a lot of portrait artists doing this, like in CG nowadays. Many of them kicking my butt already. God dang it. But you know, I'm an old fart, and I'm gonna keep fighting. And it's not a matter of like competing with people, like I said from the beginning. It's a matter of like expressing yourself and putting your face out there. You know, it's like talk, use your voice. If your art is your voice, if you're not very good at talking to people, just put like your heart and your soul into your art, and people are gonna be able to see that. If it's honestly, I fully believe that people are gonna be able to communicate and relate to your art. Okay. Have a great day, and please subscribe if you want to. Like I said, I don't have any gigantic plans for this channel, but I want to make sure that the channel grows in an organic way, and that most importantly that I can share some of the knowledge that I acquired for the past, like, I don't know, 20 years now. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and keep in touch. Comment down below if you have any suggestions about what you want to see next. And then, again, keeping my promise, the next video is going to be a full breakdown of my Giga portrait. Okay, so stay tuned, and I see you next time. No cute music just yet at the end, no fancy icons or anything, but it's going to come eventually. I'm such a YouTuber. Come on. All right, see you guys next time.